Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 172 of Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to examining the works of writer, director, producer J.J. Abrams, as well as his extended Bad Robot universe. I'm Matt Crandall, here with Marcelo Inostroza, as we continue to watch Undercovers, the series from 2010, co-created by J.J. Abrams. Today we are talking about episode 8, entitled Crashed, which aired November 10th. And Marcelo, this episode finds the Blooms traveling to Russia, getting involved in a bunch of plots, and I just gotta know, caviar, that's a food that travels good, right?
No, because I cannot stand caviar. I've had it once in my life, and I turned green when I had it. But this episode to me really rang true of the types of episodes that you kind of wanted early on. With the episode, the episode opens with us getting a lay of the land about what this episode is going to be about, and then it switches over to the Blooms for that briefing from our trusted CIA spy Shaw, and then for the most part, it's the Blooms and Hoyt in Russia trying to complete their mission. So I really like that this late in the season, the writers have finally got the formula right. It's just a shame that it was this late.
It is. So I'm pretty sure last episode I kept talking about like too little too late. And this is finally more on a part of the show that I would want to see. And they start, and they don't fix all the problems like right out of the gate, but they do start making some of those adjustments that I've been wanting. Because at the start, catering company, we got the whole gang there, and we find out that they have to cater this party for this woman that they've done every year, and she's always very demanding, and we're putting Lizzie in charge of it. And so as we then go off on the mission, we do actually come back a couple of times to see what's happening at the catering company, whereas in previous episodes, we've only come back at the very end, and they have told us, rather than shown us, what happened with the catering gig. And in this one, we get a big scene where Lizzie stands up to the woman and doesn't let them be walked over like a bunch of doormats. And I really appreciated that, okay, they're realizing for us to care about Lizzie as a character, we need to spend time with her. For us to care about this catering company, we need to actually spend some time there. And it wasn't distracting and it wasn't too much, but it was something more than they have given us, because before it's always been 2 minutes at the start and 1 minute at the end where somebody says, oh yeah, this is what happened on that job. Your high school reunion didn't go as planned or whatever. But this, we actually did cut back a few times to check in. And I thought that worked, as well as the fact that the Russia mission is Stephen and Samantha and Hoyt all together almost all the time. So they can do a lot of banter and talk, even if it's on the radio or whatever, but they're all working in tandem. And a lot of these plots, we've put them in different spots where they aren't actually interacting, where we're like cutting between them. So I like that this was like the three leads all together, working on the same mission, cracking wise, doing all this stuff as we're looking for this MacGuffin, this football bomb thing and what have you, that just felt like, MacGuffin of the week. But I actually liked the way that everybody was working together, and we got to keep them as they found the twists and turns of, their contact or whoever dies and they don't know what's going on. It's starting to be the show that I wish it had been 7 episodes ago.
It's actually getting to be so much fun. Like Matt pointed it out right there, folks. The fact that Samantha, the fact that Stephen, the fact that Hoyt are all together in this episode, it allows the audience, aka us, to feel so happy, because it's so much fun watching Hoyt and Stephen interact with each other. And the reason why it's so much fun is because Hoyt, for the whole series, has had the biggest man crush on Stephen since they met. So to see Hoyt constantly give Stephen the benefit of the doubt, and I know I said a couple weeks ago that the Mrs. Bloom thing bothers me, but now I just find it charming. I realize it's not going to change, but unlike a couple weeks ago where it pissed me off, now I find it kind of charming. I don't know if that was a change of atmosphere or the fact that the three of them were on the ground together, running the mission together. That sort of put that fear on the back burner for me, where I didn't notice it as much. The other thing that I noticed is that our favorite spy, not Leo, was missing from this episode. So I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe that guy had like a scheduling conflict, or maybe the writers learned that, hey, this guy kind of sucks. Let's just stick with the parts of the show that's working right now. But also, I liked that they cut back to the catering company and they showed us how Samantha's sister runs the restaurant when Samantha's not there. And I really, really did appreciate that, because it was nice to see her sister stand up for herself against that unruly client that they were working with, because that woman made so many changes and had so many demands at the last second that no restaurant could have done what she wanted. I mean, they lost the contract at the end of the episode anyway, but it was so fun to see it was so fun to see Samantha's sister in a role of authority, considering that we know that she is a recovering alcoholic, and we know from what Steven has told us, she hasn't been reliable in the past. So I really like that in this episode we saw that she is a loving sister and she is reliable when it comes to running the business of the restaurant.
Yeah, I think that was really good. And the other thing that this show did was it does open with the case of the week padding. But other episodes, we've spent 10 minutes before the Blooms even show up. And this was like 30 seconds, basically showing us like a Manchurian Candidate like scenario with this pilot where there's like some weird brainwashing or some weird stuff happening. And then 35 seconds later, we were into it with the Blooms and they're already on getting the brief and everything. And I think that's the way you have to do it. When we spend 6 minutes at the top of the show with other spies or other bad guys, it's too much. It's been too much. It's been way too much. And they scaled it back. So we got just enough that we knew, that this plane and this pilot disappeared and they had to find this mysterious, I can't remember what they were calling it, the FAE or something, whatever it was that they were trying to find. And so then I like when, we touch down and they have to go into this thing, and eventually Samantha realizes it's in this gigantic wedding cake because it's too many layers. But I like when them and Hoyt are talking, and like I mentioned off the top, like when Hoyt's like, yeah, bring me some caviar, that travels well, right? And then she's like, hey, this cake has too many layers. And Hoyt's like, well, then just bring me an entire layer of the cake. Nobody will care. And like, I like shit like that. So when this show is goofy and we're having fun with the action is when it works. So like, this would be so far like one of the top episodes that we've watched, because I wasn't bored. I wasn't checking my phone. I was having a good time with the characters. I like when Sam reaches in and pulls the thing out of the cake. And now, budget limitations, they jump in a helicopter, and those shots of that helicopter flying, I'm like, that could be any helicopter anywhere, because it's literally just like a blue sky and a helicopter goes by. And then in the cockpit stuff is basically like, screen projection, green screen stuff where they're flying. But I liked all of that, where they realize, they can't stop this bomb, and it's not actually a Russian made bomb. It is an American technology, which is like kind of a wrench where they're like, what the heck? So I like that there's a few red flags along the way where the one guy gets killed and they're like, what the fuck? Why would that have happened? That doesn't make sense. And then they intercept the thing that's at this Russian party, but then it's American tech. And they're like, starting to realize that the puzzle isn't the picture they thought it was. And it's just small things. So like, they're not hitting it over the head, but it all builds to the finale of the episode, which I'm sure we'll have to dig into a little bit more. But I liked when they then realize that if they can't disarm this bomb, they can fly high enough that the bomb won't go off. That gives them then time to just casually chuck it into the ocean for a huge explosion that I'm sure if you were on the beach, you would be like, whoa, what the fuck's going on over there? But I liked all these small breadcrumbs that aren't distracting. They call a little bit of attention to it, but certainly by the end of the episode feels like we're finally moving forward a bit with some momentum instead of just treading water like we have been for 8 other episodes or whatever it's been.
Let me ask you something. Why do you think it took them this long to figure it out? Because I'm like, what the hell? Like I was watching this episode today in preparation for this conversation, and I was thinking to myself, what the hell did you guys just all of a sudden get talented? And when I say you guys, I'm talking to the writers.
I think the thing that is abundantly clear is the concept for the show, sexpionage, couple on missions, but they explicitly said like standalone episodes, you can just dive in. It's not going to be serialized, which we have said over and over and over again is the wrong play for Bad Robot. This episode probably was put into production after the show had actually started airing. And I think that maybe they were able to read some of those reviews that said a Bad Robot show that has no mythology is not a Bad Robot show we want to watch. And so they start to slowly shift where we're obviously not going to be able to change overnight. We have hinted multiple times that there was more going on because previously we have seen Shaw take phone calls from this mysterious Kelvin figure. But every time that has happened before this, it's been indistinct voice on the phone. This time, it's a very distinct voice on the phone. And then we actually cut to like an old man's hand in a car hanging up a phone. Now, when Shaw takes this call at the end where he basically says, the Blooms are asking questions, because Samantha did say to him, this case didn't make any sense. And he gets this call and he's talking to Kelvin and he's like, the Blooms know something is up. What are we going to do? They know that like other things are at play. They're not stupid. They're starting to suss this out. What should we do? And Kelvin's basically like, hold tight. Let me take care of this. Whatever. Now, Marcelo, did you recognize the voice on the phone?
I don't know the actor's name because I'm not good with names. Matt, you know that. The audience knows that. But the minute I heard that voice, I was like, that's Penny's dad. Like, that is so cool. But I seriously, I lost my mind. Like, oh, that's Penny's dad. And for those of you who don't know what I'm referencing, the actor who they got to play the role of Mr. Kelvin, at least for this episode, played the role of Penny's dad in Lost. So that's where I know that actor from.
Yeah. So the actor is Alan Dale. And as soon as his gruff Australian voice came through, I was like, this is fucking Charles Widmore. Fans of the OC will know him as Caleb Nickel. And I'm like, yep. Okay. So now we're finally actually doing something with this Kelvin character, because Kelvin has made a couple of calls to Shaw earlier in the series, but it's never been this guy. So I'm like, okay, like, I think now they realized, like, and if it was, it certainly wasn't obvious enough that we would know that from the thing, but I'm pretty sure that this is his first actual appearance. And I'm like, all right, we got Charles Widmore in this, so this is going to be a thing. They finally realized we can't keep saying, like, the Blooms don't know why they're back, and then just never address it. So I'm happy that now we're in the final 5. And again, a few of these never aired and I never saw them. I am getting hyped to see where it goes and how they can hopefully come to a satisfying conclusion as we get here, because this was the best episode so far. I'm hoping it doesn't fall off a cliff. And I want to get a little bit of closure as we go, but this episode mostly, because they give us those breadcrumbs of the carryover mythology, but they just let the charisma of the cast be the guide, because Sam and Steven and Hoyt together are having so much fun and they're good at what they're doing. And like that makes all the difference in the world. They're not like behind the eight ball. They kind of figure everything out and they just roll with it and they do a good job at the case. So I'm like, I like when people are competent and we don't need everything to be a million twists and, you know, struggling to do the mission. I like when they're good spies who are good at their job and they have this charm and charisma that they can just coast on.
The other thing that I really, really liked about this episode picked up on something that I've had complaints about for the last couple of weeks as we've been covering the show, and I think Matt has too. And the thing that's been bothering me for the last couple of weeks is this. The writers introduced a mystery to both Steven and Sam in the series. A couple of weeks back, we found out what Steven's secret was, and I'm like, this is boring. It's not working. They should have made it something more drastic and something more impactful. And in this episode, during the briefing, Shaw intimates that Sam did something so awful, or she went on a mission so secret that it can't be talked about. And several times throughout the mission, Steven is egging Sam on to tell him what happened on the particular mission that she can't talk about. And at one point, the Blooms get captured by the separatists, the Russian separatists. And it's in that moment that Sam tells Steven what she had to do on the classified mission. But the one thing that I really liked is that for Sam to get out of this classified mission with her life, she had to shoot. No, I'm sorry. She had to burn a particular man with acid, a soldier guy. And a couple scenes later, as the Blooms are trying to get back to the pilot that they wanted to rescue, a guy in a military uniform comes over to the car where the pilot guy is sitting, shoots the pilot, turns to shoot at Sam, but this guy doesn't shoot her. And I love what the director does. The director does a close-up on the guy's hand, and you see that it's burnt. And it's crusty, like something happened to it. And it's from that point on that Sam goes, why didn't that guy shoot me? He had the right of way. He could have shot me in the head. Why didn't he shoot me in the head? So I really, really like this episode for two reasons. Number one, I like that they gave Sam a backstory that's actually matters. And it was actually traumatic, and I felt that it was good character building for her, and I like how they took something from within that story, and they brought it into the present, and how that might come back to affect the Blooms in their present. What do you think about that stuff?
Yeah, I thought, well, Gugu kills it in like the emotional scenes where she recounts the story of what happened, so I think that is all really good. I think it's a little bit on the nose or coincidental that the episode where she tells us about all this stuff is also the episode where this guy kind of reappears in their present. But I don't mind because it worked dramatically. So it felt like it worked. But yeah, when Steven is trying to figure out what happened and kind of trying to push her further, and then she finally tells him this whole thing, it's nice for them to have a quiet moment where she gets to really be emotional and like lay it all out. And I also like that he receives the information in a compassionate and like caring way. Because sometimes on shows like this, somebody lets out a secret that isn't that big a deal and somebody overreacts or something. So I'm glad they didn't feel the need to do any of that kind of crap. But I thought they really handled it well, where they teased out just enough that we cared, and then when we get it, it's not like a character changing moment, because like her story, anybody would have done the same thing. So it's not like, you know, what's your secret? Oh, I killed a kid to do a mission. Like, it's not something horrible that's gonna stay with her, but it was enough that it does add depth to the character without being like a morally shattering sort of thing.
I, for one, am really happy that the Blooms at this point have sort of thrown aside their rule with them saying, okay, we're not going to talk about what each other did for the agency before we met each other. We're just going to go on with what we have in front of us, and I do like the fact that they're getting to know each other better now from being able to open up with each other about one another's past within the agency, because I think that makes them richer as characters.
Yeah, it does. It also makes it feel like they had a real life before this show started, right? So sometimes, making these characters feel more lived in just adds to the way that we can relate to them, rather than them just being like, brand new or like only 8 episodes old each. So I like that we're getting this flashes of actual lived history in their job and apart and together. So that stuff, working it into the plot, is a good way to keep us engaged. And again, knowing this show only runs 13 episodes, like I think they hit it just enough in this where we spent enough time. But if we start spending like 25 minutes about the emotional backstory and baggage for characters when I know that we're not actually getting that much more future, then it would start to tip the scales. But right now, this particular episode was basically the perfect formula for this kind of show and felt like they were really nailing it. And if this had been the dynamic of everything in episode 3, I think this show probably would have done better. Honestly, because the first 2 were not bad, but it was only 3, 4, 5, 6 I was kind of down on because they just felt so repetitive and one note. And now they are starting to realize their strengths and playing to them, and those strengths are really charming lead couple. Like Boris and Gugu are so good that I'm like, they both have had actually pretty good careers since, but I'm like, how are they not superstars? Because you watch this show and you're like, yeah, I believe it. They're like these sexy super spies and they're the perfect couple. It's great.
Yeah, another thing that I've been thinking about with this show. Listen, I know that JJ created, and I know that Josh Reams created the show. I understand that, and no disrespect to either JJ or Josh, but I really think that somebody else should have ran the show. I would have. Now you're gonna think I'm crazy because they were probably busy at the time. I would have loved it if JJ would have come to Alex and Bob and said, "Hey guys, I just created the show with this other great guy, but we gotta like, we're having issues right now, and we think it's a really good idea if you guys would run the show for us, and this is what we kind of want to do." Do you think I'm completely insane, or do you think if their schedules allowed it to happen at the time, because I think they were busy doing other stuff at the time, do you think that they would have entertained that?
It is tough to tough to tell if they would have entertained that or not. And they would have been busy because Fringe was on air at this point, right?
Yeah, what season were they in, do you think? I don't
know. It would have been the end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd season of Fringe.
They're busy. They're busy.
So like I get why they didn't go to those guys, and I don't think it was maybe a showrunner. I just think it was conceptually they pitched this show as something that people just didn't want, and then they tried to roll with the punches, and it was too late to make those changes. But I'm happy to see where they take it going forward as we watch these final 5 episodes. So if you guys are watching along with us next week, we will be talking about the 9th episode of Undercovers. If you want to get in touch with us, the best way to do that is to like, follow, subscribe anywhere you can get the pod. Leave a comment. If you comment, we will read it on the show. We've got Facebook, X, YouTube. Marcelo, you can run down the handles if you want, where people can reach this.
Yeah, we have Twitter. We're at JJ Universe 815. We are at Discord. And if you want to join our Discord, wherever you're listening to us or watching us, as it were, the Discord link to the channel will be in the description as well. We're on Facebook. That link will be on the channel as well. And I do want to give a big thank you to our Facebook group that's been growing over the last couple weeks. Thank you guys for enjoying the episodes that we have coming out. It means a lot to us because we put a lot of hard work in the show. So I'm glad that at least somebody's enjoying our work.
I like to hear that. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, too bad. But you can log some movies with me on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/MDC3000. Marcelo appreciates any input. He is still rocking it on X. Marcelo, what's the handle over there for you?
Yeah, if you want to come into chat with me about the Undercovers or anything Bad Robot, you can find me on X. I'm at CreekFanatic88.
Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate everybody who has checked out the episodes. And until next time, Radio 815, over and out.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.